The former Prime Minister and the Huntingdon MP, Sir John Major, is giving evidence at the infected blood inquiry today. The inquiry is led by Sir Brian Langstaff and was set up to examine the circumstances of the scandal, the impact it's had on families, how the authorities responded to questions of consent, essentially who knew what and when. Well, people with haemophilia and other bleeding disorders were given blood infected with HIV and hepatitis viruses during the 1970s and 1980s as a result of a new treatment that used donated blood. The inquiry was launched by the then Prime Minister, Theresa May, after years of campaigning by victims who claimed the risks were never explained and that the scandal was then covered up. Compensation for victims of the infected blood scandal could run into billions of pounds after the government commissioned report suggested thousands of people should receive minimum payments of £100,000 each. Nearly 5,000 people are believed to have been infected and nearly 3,000 people have died so far.
And it soon became apparent that line of no compensation, no fault compensation, to use the jargon, was one that was going to be perfectly easy to hold in legal terms, but not at all easy to hold in moral terms. And that is why, as we will see, there was subsequently more discussion, more help, as the scale of the disaster became apparent.
Sky correspondent Ivor Bennett is in central London where the inquiry is taking place. And just remind us why John Major is so significant to this inquiry.
Yeah, this is a really significant day, a huge day for victims of this scandal who've been wanting to hear Sir John Major answer questions they've wanted to ask him for years. And as such, the inquiry room was or is currently packed with people hanging on his every word, questions about why the government didn't provide no-fault compensation to victims of this scandal. Before he was Prime Minister, Sir John Major was Chief Secretary to the Treasury in Margaret Thatcher's government in the late 80s when this scandal was playing out, a scandal which saw around 5,000 people, NHS patients, infected with HIV and hepatitis or hepatitis C from contaminated blood products or blood transfusions whilst they were being treated for things like haemophilia. 3,000 of those people, around 3,000, have since died, actually. The inquiry was shown various letters between ministers and the Prime Minister, which Sir John Major was copied into, because as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, he was essentially in control of the purse strings for various government departments and, of course, the Department of Health. And these letters kind of discussed what the government's standpoint was, with ministers variously saying why they shouldn't, why compensation shouldn't be provided, no-fault compensation should be provided. It has been suggested in the past that Sir John persuaded Margaret Thatcher not to provide no-fault compensation, but that is something he denied. He stressed, as you heard in that soundbite there, that this was more from a legal standpoint, so as not to set a precedent which could prove very costly for the taxpayer in future claims against the government in such scandals. He stressed the government at the time was not unsympathetic to haemophiliacs, but who were demanding compensation. But as I say, this is more from a legal standpoint. But there was a collective gasp of outrage, almost exasperation, certainly, when he referred to what happened to the victims of this scandal as bad luck. That is clearly not what the victims see. They certainly hold the government responsible. No government has yet taken responsibility for this scandal, but they hope that this scandal, this inquiry, will point the finger at blame to someone at some point.
Ivor, thank you very much.